Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hello there, welcome back.
So as you can see, we got yet another eruption. This one's a major eruption up to 50,000 feet.
That's a huge one. Look at that. That's got to be so scary. I don't know what I would do if I stepped outside and I saw something like this. I mean, put your feet in their shoes. Think about that. That is scary stuff.
And and it's toxic, too. So, this is in Indonesia, and we talk about where's the best places to go through these times as far as the earth change component, and that would not be on my list.
No, definitely not.
In fact, I think Indonesia would be one of the toughest places in many ways. There's so many active volcanoes, of course, in the Ring of Fire, earthquakes, you see tsunamis, you see about everything over there. And this area probably will be completely reworked by the time we're through all the earth changes and everything that's going to happen organically at some point. But right now, as we know, there's so much artificial flavoring, it's hard to know what is real in the sense what's real by Mother Nature and the bigger scheme of things, the bigger natural plan, and what is artificially flavored, as we term it, or enhanced.
Yes, exactly. That's what they're doing. That's the game that they play, which is really unfortunate for us, but our energy does hold power.
Absolutely, and Zeke agrees.
He agrees.
And so, yes, unfortunately, one life lost here. There are several injured as well. 50,000 feet, there's definitely a lot of videos and links for you guys to see. This is an active volcano. It's gone off 50 times in about the last 150 years. So it's not necessarily surprising by any means, but we have a lot of activity going on, as far as the volcanic activity. Of course, we also still have La Palma, as this is week 11 now for La Palma in this eruption. And, there is an uplift of 6 centimeters in the area where the eruption is, and things are getting redone over on that island, as we have over 3,000 buildings destroyed now. That's a lot of people that are going to be relocating. They're talking about actually making new cities. Maybe they'll move to areas that are not so impacted.
Right. So if we could take a minute and send our blessings and our energy toward these people, that they might find their way into safety, in a good way, and help them with our energy. They absolutely need it.
Yes. Yeah. Let's put those prayers out there, the positive intentions for all those who are going through all the different things that are going on the planet. Everybody that hasn't checked out Evolutionary Energy Arts, the webpage, please do. And if you guys do need to book a session with us, whether it's for Vedic astrology, energy work, spiritual coaching, what have you, conversation with your spirit guides, or just pointers on how to help your own personal ascension process, feel free to reach out to us, evolutionaryenergyarts.com or EEARTS at protonmail.com, and you could read some testimonials. And we do want to thank everybody that's helping to support our channel, and also Medicinal Foods, who have been, these guys over there, they've been family members since the channel started, and good people with good products, and we couldn't do it without you guys over on Patreon as well. So thanks for the Patreons out there. So we have a blizzard in Hawaii. Of course, this is at a very, very high altitude, so it always sounds shocking, but I do remember covering snow on Hawaii, like the last 4 years. So it does happen at the higher altitudes. Mauna Loa is ginormous. It's just such a massive, massive a volcano and peak. So you do have snow there, and of course you got snow up in Alaska. No surprise there. But Colorado remains dry and snowless, and that's interesting. But again, if I'm going to be like completely honest, and we are completely honest with you guys, although sometimes we won't say exactly what we're thinking, because we could get the channel taken down. which, now we have a few more days and then strike will be removed over on Evolutionary. Thankfully, I thought Evolutionary was lost and it was a lot of effort, but it got to 66,000, almost 67,000 viewers really fast. And then it's just been stopped there because, it's a thorn in the side of certain, entities, so to speak. So we'll be able to reuse that, even though it's been demonized, as we say, demonetized. And that again is part of this whole control grid that is really what we are battling. We're battling a control grid.
Mhm.
We're literally living in the Orwellian version of 1984. Take your preference, the book or the movie. I would check out the movie if you guys haven't yet. Boy, it's slow going at first, but when you think about it, gosh, I guess about 50 years later, 40 something years later, we're living
Yeah,
it. We're
here it
what
is.
can you
Here it
say? We're
is.
living it.
It seems pretty far out there if you were to watch it way back then, but now you can watch it now and parallel it with the times we're in today. And wow, that's all I can say about that.
Exactly. And so, there's always one of the main things that comes across is propaganda. It's all about propaganda. The propaganda can change minds. And even though we might say, hey, that came off of CNN, I don't trust it. Hey, that came off of CNBC, I don't trust it. Or, it came off of Fox, I'm not trusting it either. It's just the fact of that scope and breadth and expanse of how much even the counterpoint is still controlled by the powers that be, so to speak. Like in the movie, he's the guy that's the protagonist there. He gets a book from somebody that he thinks is an insider that's actually working for, let's just say the rebels or the rebellion or the opposition. And the book tells about their whole plan of control and everything. And it sounds like, wow, this is what they're doing. This makes perfect sense. I should be able to trust him because he's telling me what's happening. And I think about it in terms of what we see today. And, that's part, again, of the disinfo plan because they will tell you exactly what's going to happen next in many cases in order to gain your trust, but then divert you again. It'll be another, as we talk about it, it's like a maze with one dead end after the other. Just when you think you gleaned all the truth, it's going to lead to another dead end. It's going to lead to another part of the story, another part of the script. And we found many people have awakened to this fact with different movements. Some of them, might have a certain designation, and you might think that you're getting led down a particular rabbit hole, so to speak, only to find that, it is part of the plan in the first place, because that acknowledgement of certain facts that you look at and you want to believe certain things and you think, wow, this is an admission of things that are going on right here. I could see it. They're going to tell me what's going to happen next. Well, yeah, if they're orchestrating everything, they know what's going to come next. Mm-hmm. And this is what we get with scripture as well, because many people will just say, well, it must be the creator of the universe because they just told me what's going to happen. There's going to be wars and rumors of wars. There always was wars and rumors of wars, always. So you got to get a little bit more specific. And people will look to things like Daniel's 70th week and think, well, that proves out the Bible. Does it? When you look to the revisions that go in the Bible constantly, there was what we call the Masoretic texts as well. I mean, there's a whole class of priestly scribes that are constantly rewriting.
And that's what they do. That's literally their job. They rewrite and they cross things out. And it's strange, when you think about that movie, 1984, what were they doing?
They were rewriting and editing constantly. Yeah. They were taking old news, things that did happen in the past, putting new faces, new names to it, and with people that never had anything to do with anything, and plugging it into his story.
Right.
History, his story. This is exactly what goes on. And so, again, the Great Awakening is upon us. The apocalypse, the unveiling, the awakening, recognizing again that, the emperor has no clothes.
Absolutely zero.
Or the fact that the emperor is clone number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4.
Pick a number.
That the technology that we have is so far advanced from what they show you. They're showing you technology that is stuff that's thousands of years old. Thousands, not even hundreds, not even, decades old, thousands and thousands of years old. They know people are going to wake up to the fact that carbon emissions only account for so much. So there's always going to be a new explanation. But that explanation, won't be the real truth, the total truth. The fact that any condition could be manufactured. When we look to the Kardashev scale and think about, well, how about beings? How about us? What could we do in 1,000 years? Do you think we could absolutely, completely control the weather? I think we could do it now.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So how about beings? What if? And we had a great discussion with David Devine once from Adapt 2030. And, we were saying, what if people knew that the Great Cataclysm was coming 12,000 years ago, and they went inside, and they maintained all their technology and knowledge? They went inside the Earth. They emerged after the cataclysms were over. Everybody on the surface has basically been wiped out, lost their memory, starting back from scratch. But they start from where they left off. They never lost a damn thing. Think about how they would look like, quote unquote, gods. Mm-hmm. What if they've done this for 10 cycles? What if they've been doing this for 120,000 years? How far advanced would they be? They would be so far beyond what we are at now. Can you imagine what we would be at? Instead of in the year 2100, if it was the year 122,000, it's CE, Can you imagine where we're going to be at technologically as far as, what we would see if we were able to see it? Just think in those terms. All these things we've always attributed with wonder, it's got to be the work of God. It's got to be the work of the gods. Or maybe that's the work of Satan, because he could do something so evil. Maybe it's just people.
Yeah, maybe it's just people just like us that happen to live a lot longer. So it appears that they might have knowledge or superior information, but really they're just experienced beings like we are who understand their abilities and who understand how things work because they've been able to stay here and accumulate this information. Could you imagine if you were to even live to, say, 200, with all the wisdom that you accumulate in life, with all the knowledge, all the knowing, all the books? I mean, if we could just live that long, could you imagine the power we would have and understand within ourselves? It would be amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I've brought up some things before that are kind of out there in the open. When we look at, who is the WHO, right? The World Health Organization. It's about organizing world health. How about CDC, Centers for Disease Control? Why not CDE? Why wouldn't it be Centers for Disease Eradication?
Right.
And when we look to the legends of people, and people will say that's just a legend. Methuselah, 969 years. The Sumerian kings list, they ruled for 40,000 years. But when we look to the Vedic texts, which have knowledge in them that you could only get from either an amazing introspective, you spending so much time in meditation that you could reach levels that most people don't get to, or knowledge given to us either from extraterrestrials, interdimensionals, or leftover knowledge from societies that were very, very advanced. They talk all about this. They say, yeah, when you're in the Kali Yuga, men's lives shorten so dramatically beyond what they normally are, mankind's lives. And then when we get out of it, the first age, the Iron Age, so to speak, the average lifespan is 1,000 years, according to those texts. And then when we go up into a silver age, it's 10,000 years, and 100,000 in the golden age. And we can't conceive of it because we're trusting in science that is all about control, controlling perspective, convincing you. Our science is a sales job. And it's propaganda 101. Sure, there's some truths in there. It takes only a little bit. You could take a 5% distortion and change the perspective of something completely. And they're masters of this. So when we're looking at snow chaos in Europe and farmers digging their sheep out of 10 foot of snow and people having to actually go and take refuge in IKEA while we have no snow over in Colorado, it feels like they're trying to expand the great dust bowl that is upon us. And again, cold is more deadly than the heat traditionally when it comes to surviving on the planet. And lack of water is worse than too much water, even though too much water, as we know, does create massive problems as well. Look at the flooding all over the place. We see over here the volcanic activity can change things in the blink of an eye, to use a Edgar Cayce term about Northern Europe changing in the twinkling of an eye or a blink of an eye. He's one of those terms. I think twinkling, I think, is what he said.
Yeah.
And this ice sheet has subsided 56 feet in 9 days. Does it mean we have global warming going on? Well, this is due to volcanic activity, as we've had an ongoing eruption going on. There's been a lot of ongoing eruptions going on, but that's going to create more flooding too. All this is adding, and of course we had tons and tons of flooding up in Canada because of the atmospheric river, which is oversaturating certain areas, and other areas are getting bone dry if they're not bone dry already. And so we have tons of farm animals dying by the hundreds of thousands. Now, what's that going to add into? It's going to add into everything that's going on right now with the lack of food supply. All this is so tied in together. Is it because God's mad at us? No, absolutely not. Source isn't mad at us. Are the controllers mad at us? No, they just do what they do. They just do what they do because they view humanity as a herd.
Right. We're just a herd of resources that they need to keep, herding and moving forward in a direction that definitely most benefits them. So that's what we have to keep in mind, is they're always going to do what's best for them. And having that understanding, that's what we need to move forward with our lives. And we have to do what's best for us to get out of that system.
So this is out of Electroverse, which is a Grand Solar Minimum webpage, all about the Grand Solar Minimum. And I've used it and do use it, but I got to recognize I don't trust anybody's data, period, on any side, because as soon as we take a side, we're buying into something. So we look at it, and we get what we get inside. And that does guide. And instinctively, as a kid, I always felt more of a fear of the cold than the warmth. And that's just me, that's just me. And it could be due to past lives, because our past lives affect us strongly. And we see here, global average temperature dropped 0.29 Celsius last month. So it's at just 0.08 Celsius above the 30-year baseline. What does that mean? Well, according to that, it's pretty damn average. We're at a point that's pretty damn average. Well, why all the extremes? Well, there's these instruments being played that are not being played by angels, though angels are, attributed to playing these beautiful little instruments, sometimes very large instruments. As we'll see, okay, now they're
blocking it. Yeah.
Yeah, they always do this too at certain times. And they won't let this one come up right now. This is out of RT. It's talking about how the Russian people, the people that were of the former Soviet Union, they're used to facing adversity. Many of them, maybe not the youth as much, because things have been changed since the Soviet Union broke up. But the people that are perhaps in our age group, if they're in their middle years or they're in their latter years, they're used to facing food shortages and challenges. When you go to the store over there in the Soviet Union, oh, they have bread today. Yes. Not like, oh, well, this isn't my favorite brand. Oh, I don't like potato bread. Or I do like potato bread. I haven't seen potato bread in weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever it is, we're kind of we have been used to having choices. And as we've shared, and you guys probably have seen too, some of those choices are drying up now. And this is what's going to be, happening globally and is happening globally right now. And again, it's that perfectly orchestrated, I'm doing a violin with my hands right now, symphony of destruction that maybe Megadeth and Dave Mustaine saw so many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we see crypto crashing like mad. And many have made the point, our brother Dave in the UK sent me a message yesterday talking about he feels that the crypto's always been part of the plans. Yeah, because ultimately it's just digits. It's something, yes, we like the idea of getting outside of the global banking system. But then again, that's something that could be totally controlled. And who's really going to know? Who's really going to know exactly what's going on with those digits? It's not real. It's an illusion, agreed upon illusion in my mind. Maybe others see it differently, but it's not the same as, something tangible. Again, hey, I got a dozen oranges. I'll take, a dozen eggs for a dozen oranges. Does that work for you?
Mm-hmm.
And we see Nevada becomes the first state to impose basically a penalty, a surcharge. And we heard about this from family members yesterday. And, with some of our personal family members, blood family, that are on extremely tight budgets, this means that you're not going to get something.
Right.
This means, you're choosing between food or,
It's really unfortunate, and it is a very dirty trick, but this is just the beginning. This is going to expand more and more and more throughout, and they're going to demand this of more and more people and find ways to corner people as well.
question everything, and question things like, why are we building killer robots? Why are we building, these drones, as well as, now we see all those little police dogs that are robotic. And then we saw on our way out of Nevada, when we were saying goodbye to Nevada and starting to head back towards the east, we saw 4 gigantic dog, like those dog drones, like the Boston Dynamics dog, but would you say they were more the size of a tank or like a big F-350?
No, they were tank size. Like if we were to, look at a great big 4-wheel drive, and that was like the middle part of it, and then the legs stick out from there.
Yeah, they were gigantic, and of course that's by the military base, so they were probably being used, experimented with there. How many of those do they have? How many do they have? So it's interesting too. U.S. has turned down calls for a deal aimed at regulating or banning the use of lethal autonomous weapon systems like killer robots. And, why did the U.S. leave certain treaties as well? And we talked about lowering the thresholds on NUKESs. As, obviously there's other agendas underway. And as people wake up, well, right now, there's a lot of people have said no, and they've left their work. And many of these positions are being filled by, beings that don't have flesh and blood. Now, maybe in the future, there'll be a combination of flesh and blood over a robotic inner core. And when we get to a certain point and people say no, because what we have to do is basically say, no, we're not going to take part in a system that spends as much on just destroying things and destroying each other as it does for everything else combined. Obviously, that's not a benevolent system, obviously. So what's going to happen? Well, this is going to happen. This is what they're putting in place. And by the way, now we were talking about 75,000 Russian troops, and then we were talking about maybe 100,000. So now, the consensus is from intelligence, quote unquote, spy agencies, that there is, an event planned for the spring or in the winter, early in 2022, could have as much as 175,000 troops coming over the border into the Ukraine. As we could see, kind of the writing on the wall, and so many people again have been targeting that Olympics, and we think about Nostradamus's prophecy of the games of slaughter, as so many people have, jumped to that conclusion that perhaps that is what is going on. And with the slowness that you see with the computer, it's like it's not like this until we're in the middle of the video. And then they start to interfere because they don't want us getting this out.
Right.
So here is an interesting little thing on the moon, as seen by a Chinese rover. You could see too, we've gotten from the guides that the power structure shift may be a little bit more gentle because of many factors. The fact that we are very deep now into the end of the Kali Yuga. So, that's going to make the powers that be a little bit more careful about what they do because of karmic repercussions. Because they're so good at getting us to do things to ourselves so that the karma doesn't come back on them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. They're very good at that. And they're masters and professionals at it. And that's another thing that we just have to keep in mind moving forward. So we know what we're dealing with. When you know what you're dealing with, you can make such better decisions for yourself, precision decisions that put you in a place that's going to keep you healthy, happy, satisfied. But you have to know what you're dealing with.
Yeah, so as it says, it's not the obelisk like the obelisk from 2001 or aliens. They're ruling that out already. But it's interesting. Could be boulders dislodged from an asteroid impact. But it looks pretty damn square. Well, can't be aliens. But the reality is the alien invasion happened thousands of years ago. Think about that. Waking up to the fact that it already happened. We just don't see them because why? Well, look at their system. If you were in, let's say, Great Britain that was under Roman control, you might not see a lot of Roman centurions. Certainly you wouldn't necessarily see, Caesar or Pompey or any of these elites of the Roman control. But you were still under their control, still under their system. If you stop paying the tribute, well, in the Bible, if they disobey God, well, he would send a flood. He'd send, famine. He'd send pestilence, a plague. A cloud would descend and kill 70,000 people. Wow. Look at that grid pattern up in the sky. I wonder if that's like the Bible when it said a plague drifted down on them.
Right.
Was it a grid pattern? Was it tic-tac-toe? Was God playing tic-tac-toe with himself or another member of the Trinity? Mm-hmm. As you see this checkerboard pattern come down and all of a sudden 70,000 people die.
Just like that.
How about the plagues of Justinian? All you got to do is start piecing things together, and then we see that this control grid has been in place for thousands of years. We could look back again to the wars of the gods throughout the Vedic materials and look to the indigenous people that all around the globe whose cultures have been decimated, destroyed, and suppressed because they held the truth. The system conquered this planet slowly but surely, just like a raging cancer. It just invaded one area of Gaia's body after another, supplanting the indigenous people and their belief systems, turning their deities into demons, turning benevolent beings into malevolent beings, even though they're still benevolent beings, and then taking the malevolent beings and putting them on pedestals as being benevolent, even though they're malevolent.
Mm-hmm.
So they got you. It's exactly what you see in 1984 with Orwell, because what happens is the state eventually gets the protagonist and his love interest by torture, beating, and all sorts of things to profess their love for the state and their gratitude for the state, and then the state executes them.
Mm-hmm.
What homeschooling surge means for our future: freedom.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, freedom of choice. When we look to schooling, what really is schooling? Well, it's learning facts and figures and science. Well, science gets constantly revised. The facts and figures are all part of a propaganda process. So what you're really saying is, when we go and buy into the system, it's just very much a re-education program, like what's going on with the Uyghurs over in China.
Well, yeah, I look at homeschooling as an opportunity to talk to your children on a level of understanding that they're not going to get it from strangers. And also, when you go to school, basically they're just training you to be little battery packs to go into their institutions and run them so that, they can make all the money off of it. But children need to learn things like, serious things like building, cooking, cleaning, gardening, how to survive on your own. They should be learning things about the native plants in the area, things of this nature. So homeschooling is a blessing. It does give you a chance to talk to your children, especially if you're an awakened parent. That's a huge blessing to be able to talk to your children and say, hey, things are not always as they seem. And it also helps you bond more with your children. Your children see you as a human being and someone that they can really talk to and on one-on-one. So homeschooling, it's awesome.
This is part of the separation that's happening. As you're going to have some that are going to say, nope, not going to buy into the system. I don't like what you're teaching. We're going to teach our kids our way, and they're going to do this. They're also going to maintain certain freedoms and avoid certain things by doing this. And this is exactly what's happening. While other people will just simply do what's easier, send them off into the system, and we're heading towards that Borg condition, and that's something to be avoided at all costs, because this is all about freedom of expression. Again, each one of us is a unique part of source. We have that God with the big G inside us. When Yeshua said, I and the Father are one, you could say it too, or you could say I and the Mother are one. Mm-hmm. Because there is that whole side of things that has been suppressed. That's not sacrilegious. That's just acknowledging the reality. Now, that takes power away from the one that is the slave master, the one that thinks that they own the herd, the one that thinks that they are entitled to controlling others, that they know better. And that's not the case. Each one of us is a unique expression. This is wonderful. I think, this is a big part of the breakdown of the power structure. Mm-hmm. And here we have a study suggesting the sun is likely an unaccounted source of the Earth's water. We think, again, that space is a cold vacuum. There's nothing out there. Yet there is bacteria floating around out there. There are viruses floating around out there. It's not what it seems. As when we quoted the Bible again, because there are truths in there, and there's massive distortion because it's been rewritten so many times. Yet, when we talk about the Spirit of God, the Creator God, and again, that's still a God with a smaller g, in that it is a much more advanced being than anything we can comprehend. Yet, it's not source. It's still a few steps removed from source. It is a unique entity with a unique personality, unique frequency signature, and is a benevolent being. The original creators are benevolent beings. These slave traders, these cosmic pirates, are so far down the line, even though they portray themselves and they want to think of themselves in terms of being the ultimate creator. They're not even close, and they never could be. And in fact, we are all at a much higher point than they are. Mm-hmm. even though they have technology and they can impose their will on us in a 3D sense at this point in time to a degree, that's dissolving away as we speak. We still have a way to go with that. But on the spiritual side of things, it's not the case at all. Mm-hmm. And in fact, they are well below, and they're jealous of where we can go.
Absolutely. That's why they keep us so suppressed. It keeps them safe. As long as we're kept in the dark and surrounded by poop like a mushroom, it keeps them safe. So these are all things that we just need to keep in mind moving forward. Do what's best for you. Take a good look at your life and make changes that are going to give you more freedom.
We can think of it as they are on a spiritual evolutionary dead end. They're stuck. They want to get as many people stuck with them because, misery loves company. So that's what they want. That's what their whole agenda is. Come be miserable with us. Stunt your own spiritual growth. But you have to make that choice. You have to give your power away because ultimately the karmic repercussions would go on them if they truly did force you. They can make life miserable for you. They can make it tough for you, but it's still ultimately your choice. They can make it so that, it's going to take a really strong will to say, I will not succumb. And they're banking on that because they are banking on the fact that most people will just at some point say, okay, I'm just going to go along with the system. It's just too hard to do otherwise. But that's still your choice. And you have to realize that. Am I making the wrong choice? Am I giving up too easy? Because we're so close. And yet it might seem like it's so far. And if I think of it in terms of, my own personal experience of, 56 years on the planet in this particular incarnation, if we got to go another, 9-10 years before it really crumbles and we have a lot of personal freedoms and everything is going in the right way, that's still only like 20% of what I've seen. And when we are able to recount and recall some of our past lives, that changes everything. Then you realize this is just one page. Can I finish this page? Can I read down to the bottom and turn this page to a new page? I think I could do that. That's the question we have to ask ourselves. When we see what they're talking about with the sun, they say actually water can come on the solar wind. This creation that we find ourselves in is all about creating life and creating the sustainability for that life. Life is not, some random tiny little amazing thing that happened by some sort of, coincidence. Doesn't happen often. No. Life is abundant out there because the whole of creation is all about exploring. Source has set this up, the God with the big G, in a self-sustaining way. When we look at the void of space as not being a void, but more like a primordial ocean full of life ready to happen, that is much more the reality than what science is telling us. Because they want you thinking you're alone, and you're not alone in this. They want you thinking, there's nothing but their version of heaven and hell, angels and demons. That's it. And you got to rely on them. Remember, the church, which ordered the death of countless people through the Inquisition, through the witch burning, through funding, along with the monarchies in Europe, the exploration into the Americas, and ultimately the loss of 100 million or more lives of the people that were already here, and their way of living in harmony with the earth, and their knowledge that they had, that the fact that, we live multiple times, this is just one incarnation, and also their knowledge that there's a lot of other beings around there, some inside the earth, some under the ocean, and many out there, way out there. That all had to be eradicated for this control system that we see in place right now. And that's why we see everything that's going on here. So they're not going to tell you the true nature of the sun itself either, or the true processes.
No, because it would put them at a disadvantage. So that's the real world in which we live. And it's the thing, unfortunately, right now, we do have to keep that as a focus point to make sure we steer our ship in a direction that's going to keep us free. And don't be afraid to look in other books for information on our past. I know when I was going to church, I felt bad about having this strong desire to read outside the Bible. And I shouldn't feel that way. We should never feel afraid to bring knowledge unto ourselves, to have deeper understanding. And the reason that they don't want you going outside that book is because you're going to start finding things that don't make any sense. And when things don't make any sense, they're usually not true.
And again, why are we always harping on this? It's because of what's happened in the past. So many of the atrocities that have been done have been justified by saying, well, they were damned to hell anyway. They were just going to go spend eternity being barbecued. That's not the case. And in fact, nothing is forever, as everything is always changing. Our consciousness is always changing. Even when souls get trapped sometimes in between the realms for a while, it's just for a while. And that while might be 100 years, might be 200 years. There's soldiers on Gettysburg, as we said before, that are still wandering the battlefield wondering what happened. Yeah, eventually they will understand and they will move on. And again, our prayers can help that. Our prayers could actually even help those beings on fifth density and above. Mm-hmm. This is how powerful we are. Think about it. If we understood the symbiotic relationship we have with each other and everything, we can help those on the higher density go higher. In turn, they could pull and hold on to us and help lift us up into that higher density too. All of life, all of consciousness is interconnected. And again, these dark entities that control this reality, they want to pull everybody down the other way. They want to pull everybody towards that black AI dragon and that counterfeit system and absorb people into their Borg. Whether we look at it like a Borg invasion of the body snatchers, a zombie apocalypse, the black goo of Prometheus, all these shows have shown that. The Matrix with Agent Smith putting his hand inside Neo and even trying to take over Neo with that black goo and make another clone of himself. Just think about even cloning. See, Source makes everybody unique because everybody is a unique aspect of Source. It's meant to be that way. So what would be the counterfeit? Making everybody fall in line and be a clone, a counterfeit of some intelligence that views itself as being above Source, ultimately.
It's very true. They want to pour us all in a certain cookie cutter because it makes it easy for them.
Yeah, and just to recap, as we talked about that power structure, we have immediately above us the group that goes by the IGI. Everybody you see as far as the humans on this planet, they actually report to a non-human group, non-Homo sapiens anyway, but they are humanoid. They are flesh and blood. They are 3D. Above them are the ones that we know from the Anunnaki stories as the Anunnaki, which are a 4D being. And then also above them are the Draco. Now, they have other beings with them that help them, like the little grays, the big grays, and even some conquered people that will look like Pleiadian type beings, but they are conquered and have been assimilated, some of them. Beware of those. Be very, very aware of those, because there are major channels out there with much more views than what we have. And that's the reason why they have way more views than what we have, because we're being suppressed and they're being pushed up, that are going to get you ready for them to roll out these apparently Nordic-looking Pleiadian beings who I feel strongly they're going to represent them as the G-Fed. galactics that we talk about. And they may even tell you, hey, the Anunnaki are your friends. Come, hug an Anunnaki today.
Mm-hmm.
And now, again, this is all part of the distortion. They know there's people that are going to wake up and realize everything. As we were saying, they're going to wake up and realize, some are going to realize the media corruption. Some are going to end up going farther. They're going to realize the religious corruption. Some are going to go farther. They're going to recognize that the scientific corruption that's gone on and how fallible that is and how it's all distortion. Some are going to recognize that we're not alone and there is alien and interdimensional interference as well. So this is how they control that, these groups. As you go on up the line, they're always going to have another catch safe, another way of trapping people that are more awake than the ones below them as we climb up the ladder of consciousness. And that will be something that they roll out. And again, you have to be very, very aware of that. As you have to develop that ability to go within. So, stop drinking the fluoridated water, get off the GMOs, all the things that lower your vibration and frequency, big FARMA is one of the biggest things that there is, and most definitely inhibits your intuition and your ability to raise your vibration. So all these things are catch safes. And then we get up into the archonic influence, which are kind of like a counterfeit version of the angelic realm, and the archangels in particular, they're counterfeit, the archons. And, they have many thought forms that are created, as we can create thought forms too. And often we do, and we don't even realize we do it. And sometimes those thought forms can create havoc and even bring karma on us, ourselves, because we create these thought forms. This is, the legend of the golem and the retelling of the story of the golem through Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Just to give you a for instance there. And then ultimately you come to this AI black dragon entity, which was created by people very much like the Draco, but it overtook them and then enslaved them itself, and has enslaved everybody on that dark side. Mm-hmm. So just a recap there for you guys that haven't been following the channel the whole time. Again, we want to thank you for your support on Patreon and Ko-Fi. May you all be blessed with abundant peace, love, health, and happiness. Help us to keep spreading true knowledge. Make sure you are subscribed and have the bell clicked, and share the videos as much as possible. The numbers that we see are an illusion. We're reaching way more people, and you are reaching way more people. So keep up the good work. This construct that we find ourselves in is crumbling. God bless and namaste.
Namaste.